So welcome back to the workshop then, and as you can see, the body of my new Model Mandolin is together and ready for the next stage, which is really the most time consuming stage, which is putting on the bindings and the purflings. So what I'm going to be doing in this episode is really routing the rebate all the way around the body, front edge and back edge, gluing on the purflings, and then eventually gluing on the bindings. And for the bindings, I've prepared some strips of black walnut, so that was obviously in keeping with the neck, and it will be a lovely contrast with the maple of the body. As I say, this is the most time consuming process, as each one of these pieces, and I think if I'm right in thinking there are 24 separate pieces to be fitted and to be glued on. So the bindings have to be bent round the bending iron to get them to the exact shape. Then with the purflings, particularly around the front where they're a little bit more kind of ornate, you've got the mitres to cut, and that also takes a long time to get those absolutely spot on. One of the things that I always say to any client, anyone who's interested in one of my mandolins, having one built, is that time is the most expensive component that goes into a handmade, a luthier-made instrument. Which is why with my standard mandolins, the ones which I try to keep the price deliberately low on, I don't do any particular fancy purflings around the front and back, or of course the rosette. All this additional stuff takes time, as you'll see. But of course, with the magic of video, it will seem like mere minutes. So let's get cracking. Well, I'm ready now to cut the first rebate, which is for the purflings around this top edge. I must admit I hate doing this. It's a real nerve-wracking thing to do, but hey ho, necessary evil and all of that, so let's get cracking. Well, I don't know about first cut being the deepest, but it's certainly the scariest. So I'm just going to gently sand the kind of burr that it leaves all the way around and inspect that. Hopefully everything will be all right, and then I can do the next rebate for the bindings. So as you can imagine, these points are really quite fragile. So you can't just go gung-ho with the router and cut a rebate. It really needs a bit of fettling by hand, just to make sure that that tiny little bit that you want to go up into the point doesn't get ripped away. And as I said at the beginning, time. So really I'm just nibbling away with a scalpel. So with that first rebate cut to take the purflings, I now do a second rebate, which is going to be deeper that direction but shallower in that direction, and that will take the walnut bindings. Right, so that's the rebate for the bindings. The only bit again I haven't done is round the points here, because you don't want that breaking off, so I'll very carefully then trim all of that by hand. Time to put the first piece of purfling on. Although I'm going to have three layers, I like to get the first piece of black, white, black on by itself. Okay. Right, so that's the last piece of tape on, and that first piece of purfling in place. So the first piece of purfling has been glued on, and now I'm just going to fit these two pieces. So what I've got to do on the pieces of purfling which I've already glued in place, I've got to carefully cut the mitres, and then once I've cut those and I'm happy with them, I won't touch them again, and it's all about adjustment and fitting on this second piece. So really I'm just going to carefully nibble away at this. It's going to take an inordinate amount of time, so I'll show you. I'll show you when I've done it. So I think I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to carefully glue that in place now, and then I can work on the other side. Right, so that's those two mitres cut and these pieces of purfling glued in place, and that has literally taken me about an hour to do, just those two pieces of purfling. So right at the beginning, when I said about time being the most expensive component, hopefully that's a good illustration. So the purflings are all being glued around the front there, and I don't clean those up until the bindings have been glued in place. And of course that's what I'm doing now. I'm bending this walnut to fit the body, and I do each piece individually to fit that rebate. We get as snug a fit as possible, as gap free as possible, so it all looks really neat. Right, so that's that first bend, and this black walnut really bends very, very nicely, so it's ideal for this. Okay, pleased with that. So I'm just going to put a little pencil mark here and here as a kind of an index mark, so that when I put the binding back, I know exactly where it's got to go, because that part I'm extremely happy with. And on we go. So I've bent now the pieces of binding that I'm going to use around the top edge. So I'm ready to glue the first piece in place. To protect this rebate, I've just taped in place some black plastic binding material. So you'll see that when I wrap the cloth tape around it to hold this in place while it's being glued, there's a lot of tension in it, and what I don't want to do is damage that purfling. So yeah, it will all become apparent in a minute. So yeah, that's ready to be glued on. Right, and there you have it. So obviously that will be left to dry for 24 hours or so. Yeah, so when you're pulling the cloth tape around, you're pulling that binding down and into the rebate, so you get a really tight fit in there. And from my experience, it's essential to wear a glove, otherwise you're just going to get blisters where the roving pulls through your hand there. But yeah, that's the most efficient way, or most successful way I've found of gluing on wooden bindings. I find it much better than tape and rubber bands and that kind of thing. And of course, you know, if I was making a classical guitar at the moment, I would be telling you that this was the traditional Spanish way, which of course, having made lots of classical guitars in the past, is why I probably still do it that way. Well, as you can see, all the bindings have been glued around that top edge. So it's just now the job of cleaning it all up. And then once I've cleaned it up, I'll start working on the back. So there is the front all cleaned up. I must say, very pleased with the way the mitres have come out. So the next job now is to just clean up the sides, and once I've got the binding flush with the side itself, I'll be able to put that back into my routing jig and then cut the rebate for the back. Well, the bindings around that top edge have all been cleaned up, so it's now time for me to repeat the process around this back edge. And to be honest, there isn't really anything new there to show you, so I'll show you this when it's finished. However, with all the kind of downtime that you have waiting for glue to dry, I have of course been getting on with other things, and one of those other things is the fretboard. So let me show you what I've been doing regarding that. Well, it's time now to prepare the fretboard. I just had a look in my wood pile, and unfortunately I haven't got any already prepared. So I need to work on this piece of ebony here. I've had this in stock for about 20 years, would you believe? And yeah, I've just started using it for fretboards, and you can see that some have already come out of here. So the idea is that I'll saw down here and there, and that will give me a nice chunky billet, and then out of that billet I'll slice it carefully, and hopefully I should get 3 nice fretboards out of that. So yeah, that's going to keep me occupied for a while. And this isn't going to be man versus wood as you've seen before, with me with a handsaw. I'm actually going to use the bandsaw. So those outer surfaces have been sanded flat and parallel. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut off one of the fretboards, and then where that cut is, sand the billet, do the next one, etc. And hopefully I'll get at least 3 decent fretboards out of that. Right, so that's my first one. So that's not a bad saw cut, is it? And I've cut that down to just over 7. And I like my fretboard to just over 6 when I glue them on, so that should be just about spot on. So what I'm going to do now is, with this part of the billet, sand that flat, then cut another one. Okay, so there we have it. After a bit of work, 4 lovely ebony fretboards, one obviously for this current mandolin, and the others into stock for subsequent instruments. And this piece left over, which is too thin unfortunately for a fretboard, but I can see that being numerous heel caps or whatever. So yeah, successful morning's work. You really got to take great care in marking out your fretboard, and this is something that seems to take me ages to do. But anyway, that's one of those pieces of ebony that you saw me prepare. Really is a beautiful piece of wood. I've cut the fret slots using a StewMac fretting jig, put the taper on it, and yeah, so it's just really this careful marking out where the position markers, the dots on the front surface of the fretboard will go, and of course along this edge. And it's one of those things I'm really pernickety about. You know, you really want to make sure that everything's aligned properly. So yeah, great care is called for. So having marked it out in pencil, I'm just going to mark the centres now with a scriber. Right, so there we are, all marked out, side and front, ready for drilling. And I always like to start off with a centre drill for this kind of super accurate stuff, because you don't really want the drill to wander. So that's as much as I want to do to the fretboard at this moment. As you can see now, all of the side position markers have been glued in there, and the holes in the front there, they're the pilot holes for when I put the position markers on the front, but they also allow me to put small wooden pegs through there when I come to glue the fretboard onto the neck to help with the alignment of that. Yeah, so I've done that. I'd better get on and glue another couple of pieces of bindings on the body, hadn't I? So I'll crack on with that, and all I can say now is thank you very much for taking the time to watch this particular episode. Hope you enjoyed it, found it informative, and as always, many thanks for your support and for all the lovely comments that you post. They really are greatly appreciated. So until next time, you take care, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay, cheers then.